Welcome back, gang. I'm Zell, and oh boy do we have a sexy knife today. We have a buck marksman to get a look at. So, you guys know the drill. Come on in here and let's get a look at it. Alright guys, let's get a closer look at this sexy buck marksman. On this side we've got aluminum scales, torque screw hardware. I think Buck went a little overboard here with the fancy pivot, but as we'll find out here in a minute, it does have a useful purpose. And scalloping here also works pretty good for grip. However, there are some downsides to that too. And as we roll the knife around to the back side, this is where all the interesting stuff is. We'll get to that here in just a minute. For now, we have our lock bar locator, this little piece here, and we have two Allen head screws, and we'll get into what those are for here in a minute, and our flipper. This flipper is fairly aggressively jimped, probably a little more than it needs, but I suppose that's okay. As we roll around to the other side, once again we get that sexy profile, and one of the best things to come out of Buck in a long time, this deep carry pocket clip. Just like on their Vantage series of knives, this clip goes all the way up, and instead of having some waterfall hook or something silly like that, it goes across the top of the knife. And by doing that, it eliminates all the silliness that comes with those waterfall style or fold over style clips. We've got two Torx head screws right there that hold it in place. And like I said, of Buck's recent stuff, that's one of my favorite things. It comes out just perfect. However, on this knife, we talked a little about these cutouts here. Those cutouts are pretty freaking sharp on the edges, and they will get at your pants. So on my knife, I'm probably gonna do something about softening those up just a little bit, and whenever I do that, I'll take you guys along. We'll see how it works out. So before we open this knife up, we should probably talk a little bit about our mechanism. We have our handy dandy desk hammer here. We'll use as a pointer. This piece of stainless here with our sculpted little cutout here is our lock bar and our closed detent. What we're going to look at for now is this end. We've got these two screws, and then whenever we lift the knife up here, we have this piece of metal right here, which rides in a track in the scales that goes forward and back and holds this little locator, this little raised piece that allows us to locate the lock bar. To adjust this, you put a small Allen wrench in here, and I'll try to get what size it was whenever we do a video on how to adjust one of these. But it's a pretty small Allen wrench. Stick it in there once you have this loose, and you can adjust this lock bar, which adjusts the tension here to adjust your lockup. That's important because that is, in my opinion, a user service item, and I've had this knife for quite a while, I'm not sure, and I've had to adjust it a couple of times, and so it's not something you're going to want to send it into Buck all the time to do, and it's pretty easy. We'll look more at it a little more here in just a minute. For now, we're going to get a little more into the operation of the knife. See that little cutout under the flipper? Watch what happens to that lock bar whenever we push the blade closed. Lock bar will start to raise up, and then it pops in. I'll do that again a little slower, see if I can't hold the knife in place better. Watch that lock bar. Up just a little bit. Snaps in. There's your closed detent. On the other side, we have this hook here cutting the blade, and this catch here. Whenever we go to open the blade fully, watch that lock bar. Springs up just a little bit, and then pops over, providing us our lock. They claim it is as tough as a fixed blade knife. I'm not going to go that far. However, I do believe that if we put this in testing up against some other knives, that this would probably be way up the scale. I don't know if it'd beat a triad lock, but as we'll see in a minute, it's a lot more fun and a lot easier to use than a triad lock. So let's go through some numbers. We have a closed length of 4 11/16, a thickness of 0.48, and a height of 1.3 all the way across the knife, with the exception of down here by the flipper. And whenever we get down to the flipper, we get up to about 1.4. Let's get a weight on the knife. 4.25 ounces. Not too bad for the size of knife it is. And this thing is all aluminum and steel. I don't think there's any plastic or anything that isn't metal or isn't some sort of metal on this one. Okay, so we do have a flipper, and I wish that I could put your hands on this thing because it doesn't take a whole lot of pressure to get it open once you get past that closed detent. That's it. That thing's open. Now that we've got it open, we've got 8 1/4 inches overall length, a blade length of about 3 1/2, and right now the edge length is about 3 1/2 as well. You can see these little black marks I've got down here. That's where I'm gonna get this thing on the Dremel and remove this. Let me see if I can zoom in there for you. I think that'll work. You see this line going right down through here. Well, that's the plunge grind, and Buck did a pretty bad job of bringing the sharpening choil out past that plunge grind. So I'm going to clean that up, see if we can't straighten out our edge a little bit and get rid of this curve down here. And maybe hopefully you guys will see this knife again once we've done that. Moving along with our metrics, we have a blade thickness of 0.12 or 3 millimeters if you're from outside the United States, which is fairly common for a tactical knife of this size or an EDC knife of this size. Okay, so how do we work with this thing? First thing, we've got a flipper. Buck tells us we're supposed to get a hold of the blade, lift up here with both fingers, and close the blade. Now, as you know, we're all going to figure out better ways to do it than that. So, still going with the flipper, thumb right here, and it falls closed. Still with the flipper, thumb right there, falls closed. Something we need to notice though, we've got a blade hole here. Why in the world would they put a blade hole on a flipper that is so easy to open with the flipper? I mean, it's really good. The thing's running on Buck's ball bearings in there, and it just works extremely well. So maybe we should try to open it, say, like a Lockback Spyderco. Oh hey, that works. And not only does it work, the feel in hand is not too much different than a Spyderco. I mean, granted, it's not a round hole, and yes, it is a little lower on the blade than most of the Spydercos, but it's right there, and it opens well. So, well, maybe we can flick it open, too. Oh, hey, what do you know? Don't need any wrist for that. That thing just rolls right around there. So, what Buck has stumbled on here, and sorry guys at Buck, but I just can't believe you planned all that. It is a collaboration with G&G Hawk, and maybe the Hawks planned that, but with the stuff we've been seeing out of Buck over the past few years, I can't see that they planned it all. But what they've stumbled on, what they've designed, is a blade that lends itself well to being flippered, of course. It's got the flipper. To being bench mated. And control open in a Spyderco-ish manner. All of which work really, really well. The only thing you got to get used to is lifting up there to unlock the knife. As you can tell, I kind of like the knife. We're going to go and we're going to pick on Buck a little bit though. As we mentioned, these scallops are pretty sharp. I like the knife enough, I'm going to do something about that. This bar. It's an ingenious way to lock the knife, and from looking at it, I'm guessing it's very sturdy. I'm not going to go as far as saying it is fixed blade knife sturdy, but it's sturdy. Very sturdy. This is one of those knives that Cold Steel needs to put in their kind of fun little tests that they do. Or better yet, somebody else independently do that. That would be even better. And my goodness, guys, this thing is sexy. It's just got the looks. And the only thing I can really knock Buck on are these, I don't even want to call them pivot screw or that. It's like little caps on the end of your pivot screw. It's not, but that's what it seems like. And I understand wanting to expand the surface area of the pivot screw. It just doesn't seem to do anything for me in this knife. Except one thing that we'll get to in a minute. It really seems like the Hawks and Buck were just trying to dress the knife up some. And Buck has done this on some of their other knives. And the way they've cut it, I just, we'll get a close look at it. You can see there, it gets junk down in it. It is just not really pretty for me. However, whenever we grip this knife, you get it in a hammer grip. It's great. Don't really need the jimping. This is a great example of building a knife without any jimping and it not really needing it. Some of you guys out there, I know, you got to have your jimping, but on this knife, it's just not necessary. You get a hold of it like this, you've got this big old flat area on this kind of bottle opener shaped lock bar, and you're good. You want to pinch it? You've got these pivot caps that you can get a hold of on both sides. You want to get choked up some to do a little draw cutting? You've got that blade hole right there to stick your edge of your thumb in. You like to get up a little taller on it? I mean, it's just a really, really good example of what can be achieved as far as grip goes without loading the knife with jimping. I mean, yes, we have some right here, but you know, this jimping here, it's there, but it's really just for closing the knife, and they didn't even have to go as aggressive as they did there. It would have been fine with just some waves there or something. So there it is, guys, the Buck Marksman, model 830. I'd like to see more stuff like this come out of Buck USA. I'd like to see a 3-inch version of this knife come out of Buck USA. I'd like to see this knife and some other steels and see them clean up those edges a little bit so that we don't tear up our pockets. It's just refreshing to see Buck do something great, and this is a great knife. You know, I've got other Bucks laying around here that it just pains me to even think about putting them on the screen. Not this thing. This thing is one of my favorites. It's one of those knives where I definitely need to sit down behind the desk whenever we're talking about it. So what do you think, guys? Buck Marksman. Probably one of the best knives to come out of Buck in a long time, as far as everyday carry or tactical folders go. If you haven't noticed, I really like this knife. I like the way it works. I love how it looks. And I even like how this thing rides in the pocket. Nice and low. I've had this thing for, I don't know, several months. And the reason you guys haven't seen it is because whenever I don't have a knife in my pocket that I'm testing, this one has been riding there. You know, it's kind of a toss-up, but this one and the Mannix Lightweight with that S110V blade are the two knives that go with me places. And that's something we didn't talk about in the camera down view. The blade on this thing is 154 cm with the Bose heat treat. And it's good. That's about all you can say. It is probably at least on par with anything coming out of Benchmade in 154 cm, but I really think it's better. My Mini Reptilian does not hold an edge like this Buck Marksman. And the other thing that we didn't really go over in there is this thing is hollow ground, and it is super thin down by the edge. I took some notes for you, but I don't see them right now. So anyhow, what the notes said was that behind the edge, this blade is as thin as a full flat grind Spyderco Delica 4. And we know how good a slicer those are. And this one is pretty much right in there with it. The hollow grind and not being full flat, it's not quite there, but it is very good. Anyhow, if you haven't figured it out yet, I really like it. I like the lock mechanism. The lock mechanism does take some work on your part, and I will try to get a video out sometime in the near future on how to adjust that lock mechanism, but it's pretty darned easy. Definitely not a hard thing to do. All you need is a set of Allen wrenches and a little bit of patience. So this thing, I don't even want to say thumbs up. It's just one of my favorites, guys. Rolling on them ball bearings, and I'm not a big ball bearing guy, but in this knife, it just works great. Anyhow, I'm going to stop rambling. I like it. It gets a thumbs up. It's one of the better knives that I've messed with. It surprises me that it came out of buck. But, you know, whenever you put buck with G&G Hawk, you're going to come up with some pretty darn good stuff. So, don't forget to like, share, and be sure and whack that subscribe button so you don't miss out on anything. And just so you know, I am on Twitter and Instagram at Zelrick42 on those services, Facebook as well, if you want to follow me over there. And you guys have a great day, and I'll see you next time.